I think that the online discussion about FromSoft games is broken. Take the feedback to Elden Ring, for example. It feels like people are casting the male role for a porn scene.
Elden Ring is the biggest game ever made. When you start, the map is like this, and you go, damn, this game is big. Then you get teleported to the other side of the map and realize, oh my god, this game is big. Then you get teleported to the top of the map, and you go, whoa, this game big.
This one executes on certain ways that allow the discoverability of the giant world that you're in.
I think all of us have underestimated how big this world really is.
The world is massive, absolutely massive.
In my experience, a game's size is usually not beneficial to its quality. In fact, in more cases than not, it's to its detriment. The main problem with the criticism is that it's usually overly positive or overly negative. Keep in mind that these are, as most games, flawed in a lot of ways. Some of those flaws have been repeated for so long that people just got used to them and they don't even bring them up anymore. Regardless, I've been listening in on what people have to say about these games and it's quite entertaining. So I came up with this idea to do a sample review. What is a sample review? I watched a few big YouTubers who talk about FromSoft games, and I'm gonna take their words and see how many I can apply to Dark Souls 2 in an effort to showcase how a lot of what people say as positive things can also apply to DS2. I hope you enjoy. The first thing that comes into my mind when I think about Dark Souls is the feeling of trekking through a dimly lit cave, searching helplessly for a bonfire. I'm low on Estus, my will is nearly broken, and my sword is the same. I really do feel like Dark Souls 2 is an awesome place to begin. In fact, I might even go as far as to say it is probably the best game to start with, as it's not like insanely oppressive right at first. It does a lot of really smart things that allow a player to figure out what's going on, and it slowly eases them into the mechanics that it's trying to teach them. It might be the best game at doing that, I'm not sure, but it's certainly up there, so I want to explore exactly what that is. But more to the point, going back to this game with a bit more of a watchful eye, I try to pay much deeper attention to all the little things that make up the experience. The good and the bad alike, but in my opinion, that's why I said Dark Souls 2 is the far and away crown victor for its overall game design in the Dark Souls series. Specifically because it makes for one of the most refined, palatable, enjoyable, and rich experiences that a video game can offer you. So I think it's probably good for us to begin with the world design. This is kind of like a good starting point, because it kind of hangs the story and lore, and the game makes certain choices either within its actual gameplay or level design that are to accommodate that world. In other words, it's good to have a basic ground level understanding of the story and world design because it puts so many seemingly abstract and disconnected things into context. That's one of its greatest strengths, that it's so atypical in its presentation. Most mainstream games are pretty straightforward in this regard because they need to have stories that babies can understand, which makes it all the more puzzling how Dark Souls is able to appeal to such a wide audience. Because you can't go through the game and not be constantly asking questions. The plot is minimalistic and it's up to the player to come to their own conclusions. You fill in the blanks and there's a fuck ton of blanks to fill in. Now there's always a possibility that by making your story vague and confusing, it ends up making no sense and being vague and confusing, but then there's the other side when you have a confusing or unclear story, but the experience is so enchanting it makes you want to know more. And that's what Dark Souls accomplishes, so it doesn't fall into the plain old just bad storytelling category. Forest of the Fallen Giants are the game's intended starting area, and it certainly feels like it. Enemies are slow, don't hit all that hard, and sometimes go completely catatonic. In terms of overall enemy difficulty, the forests are an extension of the tutorial. However, the game has taken you off the rails and you're free to explore around. It's worth doing so too, since even though the woods are relatively forward, there's some hidden paths and extra items tucked away out of immediate view, and despite the fact that the enemies are easy, getting cocky when more than one is attacking can still get you in trouble. Dark Souls has some unique elements to its level design that really sets it apart from other games. The main few just being the secrets in form of illusionary walls or hidden locations, as well as its unique addition to traps. Something I really think DS2 does a superb job at for the most part when it comes to levels are actually the routings that are baked into them. helpful shortcuts you can discover, small side puzzles, or little areas with neat items to reward a curious and brave eye. All of these things are bread and butter of what makes the DS2 level design really stand out when done right. However, admittedly, there's a few areas of the game that feel a little underdeveloped, maybe stretched out or bloated, have some strange choices, or just straight up tedious in some ways. But there's a bit of, copy-paste stuff here and there that's used throughout the game, but it is done pretty sparingly, or in a way where it's, kind of like thematically fine, and I can excuse it. It doesn't hurt the experience too much. You could say that Dark Souls 2 is an easy action game, because despite its fearsome reputation, its gameplay is relatively simple and players are likely to have the hang of its most core parts. In short, you can dodge, block, or move away from enemy attacks, and in response you have a light attack and heavy attack. There are also some spells, consumables, parrying, and backstabs, but your overall toolset is slow and executing these moves are relatively easy. DS2 doesn't require the player to have fast reaction times, or skillful hand-eye coordination, or mastery over complicated button inputs, or the ability to memorize long combos. In fact, DS almost feels like an anti-action game. It substitutes fast and fluid complexity for slow and methodical simplicity, and you can viably play through the game with dodging and light attack spam alone. The flow of combat is where the game truly shines, because it doesn't matter how upgraded your equipment is, how good your weapons are, if you can't manage this little green bar right here. If you can't dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge and block, you ain't gonna get through shit. This green bar right here, this is your stamina, your soul, your life. Every action you take besides walking requires stamina, and it's the game's way of limiting what you're capable of. The entire game must be played around it. This fearful sense of progression in the game is what makes it so great. It's a process of breaking you down through failure and building confidence through your victories, no matter how small they may be. And your progress through this game is not by the game telling you what to do, or where to go, or holding your hand through the dark until you win, but by you saying, fuck it, I'm doing this and this game will not stop me. Tell me another series that enables this mentality. Dark Souls forces you to dig deep and find the determination to keep going amidst your cries of anguish and despair, and that's not something you simply program into the code of a video game. You must be prepared to die, pick yourself off the ground, grit your teeth, and spend that last drop of hope inside of you to keep going. The best playthrough is your first one, because you have no idea what's around the corner, what to expect. This is why I think watching guides or gameplay before you play the game yourself is a cardinal sin. You shouldn't do that because half the fun is discovering things on your own and getting your ass whooped. Not many games give players such an extraordinary urge to explore and make it so dangerous at the same time. It's not even just the enemies you have to look out for. Gravity has me more times killed than any single boss. That's the enticing part of Dark Souls. Combined with the healing system, there's a risk-reward scenario. I mean, perhaps you're down to 2 chugs of that sweet Sunny D, but you feel close to a bonfire or a special treasure. Do you risk death, your soul, and humanity to press on? Or do you turn back, play it safe, and try again? These decisions you make throughout the game are crucial. Dark Souls 2 gives the player more agency about how they play. Want to approach the game almost entirely relying on magic? Great, you can do that. Want to play just more like a melee build with very little magic, if at all? You can also do that too without being punished for playing a different way. There's plenty of builds to experiment with, and that's where the fun begins. Because you can't realistically cover everything in one playthrough. You have to make decisions about what playstyle you like best so you can optimize in it or try to find a general balance in between. Some weapons hit hard, but they weight you down and are easy to dodge. Others can inflict status effects, and all the sets of armor offer different levels of protection. There's nothing wrong with switching weapons or equipment if you desperately need to, and the game almost encourages this by giving you tons of upgrade materials. Titanite is the material used in all upgrades. Many weapons will require standard Titanite, whereas other weapons like magical equipment and boss weapons will require twinkling Titanite. The highest upgrade is plus 10 for the larger batch of weapons, while the other weapons that use other Titanite upgrades will only go to plus 5. This is because more often than not, these weapons have unique abilities or movesets that set them apart from traditional weapons, making them unique items. This isn't Elden Ring where you can get a level 20 weapon, level your character to 5000, and find the best spells, consumables, and physics in the game by the time you get to the first boss. There's no endless free farming, no map, no giant world without restrictions. You just gotta suck in your nuts and do it. And that feeling of conquering such a beast of a game is so damn special. Every enemy is different and most likely you're going to die to each one of them at least once. However, this is where Dark Souls offers a level of mastery for the players to achieve. By learning the patterns and moves of your foes so well, you can fight them without even taking a hit. Gameplay tools have reasons to be in the game beyond their immediate use. You could run through the list of items, mechanics, tools, and weapons and connect each one of them as pieces to form the greater whole of Dark Souls' universe, story, and lore. And that's the beauty of this game. That's where the depth comes from. Take the classic gameplay element of dying and respawning. In pretty much every other game, except Bioshock, the concept of respawning has little to no explanation at all, because it's just a video game. But in Dark Souls, death and respawns aren't just gameplay mechanics, they're part of the story. You're an undead, branded with the dark sign, which means you cannot truly die. But each death brings you closer to hollowing. So you're linked to the bonfires, you're linked to the flames. So as long as there's bonfires, you will keep coming back. It's not often you see a game that has justification for its gameplay mechanics written into its lore. What separates Dark Souls from many other games is nobody is essential. The game doesn't have any arbitrary barriers or who you can and can't kill. Some NPCs will encourage you to help them, while others will try to send you on a path of bloodshed. Bloodborne and Elden Ring are a masterclass in world design. Bloodborne has that unforgettable H.P. Lovecraft influence that resonates throughout its world. It's unmistakable and stands out when compared to anything else. Elden Ring has a lot of that like one-of-a-kind George R.R. Martin weird brain stuff. Each area in DS is more like its own puzzle that the player needs to solve before moving on. You need to make a mental map of their layouts as you explore their various pathways. You need to deal with a variety of unique environmental hazards like limited space or visibility, and you need to recognize or learn from potential pitfalls put in place by way of enemies, traps, and ambushes. Through this, DS tests more than just your ability to fight. You need navigation and observational skills, as well as a certain amount of perseverance. Bosses are all huge and epic. They intimidate and make us feel tiny. All these bosses offer value in either gameplay, challenge, lore, atmosphere, or all of the above. They bring a whole new level of terror and fear to an already hostile world. That was another big thing that really stuck out to me when playing it again is I love this game's color palette. It's so pretty and they use color very effectively throughout the game. That's one of the things that makes this game so easy to play. And I don't mean easy in a difficulty sense. I mean easy and in a way where it's just good to look at. You want to continue to play the game because you like looking at it. That's kind of what I mean. Yeah, I couldn't find fitting ending quotes, so that's gonna be it. Now I want to go through some of the lines you just heard because I just can't leave without a comment or two. Starting with that very last one about color palettes. You thought me saying that reviews of these games are overly positive to be a stretch? My guy seriously included the fact that he enjoys looking at the game. What makes Dark Souls 3 so special? It's pretty to look at. At least he makes some kind of dumb point here compared to some of the other times where he's literally saying nothing. What was that whole thing about Bloodborne and Elden Ring's world design? He said nothing about what makes either of them amazing. He just said that Bloodborne was inspired by Lovecraft and Elden Ring has, quote, that George R.R. Martin weird brain stuff. If he told me he's doing some kind of high-level parody content, I would believe him. But what that whole quote showed is that he has no idea what world design is. And there was a whole lot of Actman quotes, mostly because his video is a big fanboy one. He talks about how great Dark Souls' story is and how deep it is, but in reality he is just overpraising a different type of storytelling. Lots of games tell their stories through environments, and the fact that Dark Souls tells lore through items is definitely unique, but it doesn't make it some mind-blowing genius new method. If I have to praise it, I say that I like it precisely because you're hardly forced to engage with its story if you don't want to. There's one or two examples in Dark Souls 1 specifically where you have to read the items, but overall the fact that I can just play without worrying about what any of this is great. He also just repeats himself a lot. The biggest example being when he's talking about the stamina, quote, if you can't dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge and block, what is he talking about? You can only dodge and block from the world salad he just tossed at us. He's describing rolling 5 times where he repeats dodging twice. Amazing. There's probably more I could comment on, but I just wanted to highlight my favorites. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!